I collapsed right in the middle of my shift. The industrial lights on the ceiling spun above me as the medical staff pushed the stretcher, and the doctor said they had called my parents. No one came. 3 days later, still lying under the cold white lights with an IV needle in my hand, I opened my phone and saw what they were doing. A photo. Sunlight by the lake, a picnic table full of food, my sister smiling brightly. The caption hit me harder than the heart attack itself. Family day, no drama. I didn't text. I didn't cry. I just watched the number of likes climb and wondered when my family had started choosing performance over love. By the fourth day, 74 missed calls appeared, along with one single message from my father: "We need you." And in that moment, everything changed. Before I tell you what happened right after that message, tell me where you're watching this video from. I always read every comment. Now, let's go back to that morning, when I realized their silence weighed heavier than any pain in my body. There are silences, more painful than cruel words. The Chicago rain tapped steadily against the hospital window, reminding me that the world outside kept moving, even though I had just collapsed in the middle of my own life. The cold white room, the smell of disinfectant, the light hitting the corner of the wall. Everything was pure in a way that made my throat tighten. I glanced at the phone beside me. The black screen reflected my pale face, and a truth even darker. Not a single call from my family. Only the image I had accidentally opened in part 1, Mallory posing by the shore of Lake Michigan, golden sunlight spilling over her hair, food filling the entire table, the caption glowing, "Family Day, no drama." Drama was me lying motionless under the emergency lights. I closed my eyes, but the memories refused to shut. My mother, Janet, always knew how to make people feel guilty. Just one breath-light sentence. "Nora, I really don't want to bother you, but the bill came again, and I paid. This time, then the next time." My father, Frank, was still looking for a job. 8 years now. Yet my account continued quietly covering every fee, every old debt, every loan he never mentioned. Mallory, with the camera set up in her aesthetic bedroom, live streaming every night about healing and self-love. But I was the one paying the rent for that apartment. Cole, my younger brother, was gentler, sweeter. But the sis, "Can I borrow a little this month?" had stacked into a pile he never once repaid. I thought that was family. But it turned out to be dependence wrapped in the label of love. The doctor came in to check my vitals, then left. As the door clicked shut, the silence settled so thick I could hear my own heartbeat through the monitor. I reached for my phone. Instead of messages asking how I was, I saw a long line of bank notifications. Auto payment completed. Auto payment completed. Auto payment completed. Some of those charges I didn't even remember agreeing to. It felt like someone was tightening a rope around my chest. Not a doctor, but the very people I kept trying to protect. By the fourth day, the screen lit up. 74 missed calls, and one single message from my father. "We need you." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Your mom and I are worried." Just a command. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling until it blurred. A truth, small, but enough to crack the foundation I had clung to for years, settled in. They didn't need me. They needed what flowed out of my bank account. And in that very moment, I began remembering all the times I had been treated like I didn't exist. It wasn't the first time they abandoned me, just the first time I was clear-headed enough to see it. I grew up in a red brick house on Belmont Street, where the Chicago winter blew knife-sharp winds against the windows. In our small kitchen, my mother, Janet, always kept the perfect smile whenever guests were around. But once the door closed, the air turned colder than the snow on the porch. Since I was little, I learned one thing. I had to do everything right, so the family would look right. If my father forgot to pay the electricity bill, I was blamed for not reminding him. If Mallory got into drama with friends, I was told to fix it for your sister. If Cole broke something, I had to clean up because he's younger. The older child must know how to yield. I didn't know when I became the responsible one. I only remember that every night my mother would sigh, "This house depends on you, Nora." I was 12 years old. In high school, I had just come home from class, chalk dust still on my shirt, when I saw my father sitting at the dining table, crumpling a piece of paper. It was another overdue bill. He looked at me, said nothing, and slid it across the table as if asking for help was a default setting. The next day, I worked a shift at the coffee shop near my school. I paid it with tip money. My 18th birthday didn't come with a cake. Instead, my father handed me a letter, his debt document from the bank. His voice even sounded proud. "You're grown now. It's time you learn how to take care of this family." The first time Mallory's decor project failed, I handed over all my summer savings so she could clear the debt. She hugged me, but I remember her next sentence clearly. "You really are the backbone of this family." Backbone, not a person. Cole was gentler. He always scratched his head, smiling softly. "Sis, help me this one time. I swear I'll pay you back next month." Next month? Then the next year. Never came. I thought all of that was love, but now I see it was simply efficient exploitation. In the entire family, there was only one person who never saw me as a lifeline: Grandpa Harold. He was quiet, thin, with Milwaukee ash-colored hair. He often sat at the wooden table by the window, reading his own bank statements at the beginning of each month. One night when I was 20, he called me to sit beside him and pushed his laptop toward me. "Do you ever check where your own money goes?" I laughed it off. But he was serious, his eyes sharp as a blade. "Numbers don't lie, people do." It was the first time he showed me how to read statements, how to check recurring transactions. But when I opened my own account, I closed it before I could scroll down. I didn't want to see the truth. And he didn't force me. He only placed his hand on my shoulder. "You can't save someone who's dragging you under." Back then I didn't understand. Now, I understand too well. I remember having a high fever, curled up under the blanket, sending a message in the family group chat. "I'm sick." My mother left a heart emoji. My father saw it without replying. And Mallory posted a story from Lake Geneva, "Reset trip with the fam." I wasn't included in that definition of fam. I remember the phone bill for our old house, the address I had moved out of 4 years earlier, still auto-deducting from my account. I remember the times my father said, "You're the only one I can trust." But what he wanted to trust was my bank balance. What I remember most is the feeling each time I opened a bank notification. I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. In reality, I was just terrified of being seen as the one who walked away. I once believed I was holding the family together, but the truth was, I was only tying myself to them. There was one time I wanted to say no. Mallory asked for money to pay a sponsorship penalty. I was exhausted, drained, on the verge of refusing. But my mother said, in that familiar sharpening stone tone, "Family doesn't abandon each other, Nora. Just push through a little." I believed that sentence, and it became the rope that tied me for years. If I had known that rope was tightening around my neck, maybe I would have let go sooner. The most painful moment isn't when you fall. It's when you wake up and realize no one is standing beside you. When I opened my eyes, the white light on the ceiling almost blinded me. It was so clean it felt cruel, as if there was no place for emotions to hide. The urgent beeping from the first night was gone, replaced by a slow, steady, cold rhythm. In that moment, I felt like a stranger lying inside my own body. Every movement was heavy, every breath exhausting. But the heaviest thing wasn't my body. It was the truth. 3 days. No one came. No one asked. No one even knew I had nearly died. The smell of antiseptic mixed with the cold air from the ventilation system burned my throat. The sound of metal carts echoed from the hallway, distant then closer, like the steady heartbeat of this place. But right beside my bed was an empty chair, a chair that, in a normal world, should have had someone sitting in it, holding my hand, or at the very least, just being there. I reached out and touched the edge of the sheet. Cold. Very cold. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. This was the first time I allowed myself to think. Maybe I really was abandoned. Not accidentally, but because that was simply their habit. Harold's voice echoed in my head like a knock from a memory long locked away. You stand so firmly. No one ever learns how to stand beside you. Back then I laughed, thinking he was exaggerating. But now, when I stared at that empty chair, everything he had ever said felt terrifyingly accurate. He had been the only one who ever saw through the armor I wore, as if he knew exactly how fragile I was under that reliable exterior. My phone buzzed. A message from Mallory. Hey, can you process this invoice for me? I'm stuck on a deadline. Not a single, are you okay? Not a, Mom said you collapsed. Just money. Just convenience. Just a habit carved so deep it had become instinct. The light from the screen hit my face, stinging my eyes even more than the hospital lights. Not because of pain, but because I finally understood that I was never the daughter, never the sister to be loved, only the one to be used. I looked at my hands, the hands that had paid countless bills, that had held up everything so nothing would fall apart. I whispered a sentence I had never dared to speak aloud. Why did I believe love meant enduring? And another. And why? Did I think I didn't deserve to be loved? The hurt was no longer the heart attack. It was an old truth. But today, I was finally brave enough to face it. I set my phone down. For the first time in many years, I didn't respond. I didn't know. One unanswered message would be enough to make my whole family crumble. And I had no idea that just a few hours later, my phone would shake so violently it would turn this silent room into a battleground. Sometimes, silence is the very thing that makes the world on the other side panic. I placed my phone face down after Mallory's emotionless message. 3 minutes later, it vibrated. Then again. Then again. Over and over, like someone pounding desperately on a door. My mother's name. My father's name. Cole's name. Mallory's name. The screen flashed repeatedly, turning into a blinding strobe of light in the cold white hospital room. I didn't answer, and that silence made them far more uneasy than any words ever could. For many years, my father, Frank, always used that soft, guilt-inducing tone, the kind that made you feel wrong even when you'd done nothing wrong. But this message wasn't like that. Nora, you must call back. Immediately. This cannot wait. No. Are you okay? No. Your mom and I are worried. Just commands. And panic hiding behind every word. A shiver ran down my spine. Not because I was worried for them, but because I wondered, what could make them, people who were just eating by the lake, suddenly scramble to reach me like this? 1 minute, 10 calls, 5 minutes, 30 calls. Each vibration felt like a hammer hitting my chest. The monitor beside my bed ticked up slightly with the chaos, as if even the machines could sense the storm rushing toward me. I looked at the string of 34 missed calls. Not longing, not love, just their fear. And the only question in my mind was, Were they afraid of losing me or losing what belonged to me? The door opened. Harold walked in, his wool coat still carrying traces of Chicago mist. He looked at the vibrating phone, raised an eyebrow. They're losing control. I swallowed. Why? He sat down, opened his familiar leather briefcase. What they built with your money is starting to crumble. One simple sentence, but it tore through every last bit of calm I had. The phone stopped vibrating suddenly, then lit up again with Cole's name. This time, I answered, not out of sympathy, but because something in me sensed the truth was sitting on the other end of the line. Cole's voice shook, nothing like his usual easygoing self. Sis, something big happened to the family. I said nothing. He swallowed hard, then said the sentence that made my chest contract. If you don't pay this month, we lose everything. We lose everything. Yet somehow, everything was standing on my shoulders. Cole's breathing grew frantic. Sis, they used up your secondary account. They said you'd handle it. You always handle it. I bit my lip hard enough to draw blood. Why did that sound so familiar? He continued, voice almost breaking. The mortgage, the old debts, Mallory's card fees, my semester tuition, all of it comes from you. If you don't pay, they have nothing left. My mind felt like it split open, not because of the amount, but because of the naked truth. They didn't just need me. They survived because of me. And now, they were collapsing because I stayed silent. I closed my eyes, drew a long, deep breath. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I wanted to save them anymore. And I had no idea. The next collapse would be even bigger. The truth never arrives when you're ready. It arrives when you no longer have the strength to run from it. The Chicago afternoon cast a diagonal beam of golden light across the hospital room, cutting through the stack of documents Grandpa Harold had just placed on the table. Papers piled over one another like peeled layers of skin, each sheet a fragment of truth I didn't know I was about to face. He removed his glasses, pointed to the far right corner of a thick bank statement. You don't know this, Nora, but that house has been under your name for 3 years. My heart skipped. I tried lifting a page, but my hand shook so badly the paper crackled like the sound of something breaking quietly. A house in my name? 3 years? They used your name to run on your credit. Your credit is good, theirs is not. I remembered the times my father said, "Let me use your name for this. I'll pay it back tomorrow." And I believed him. I always believed him. Harold turned a sheet around, the one with "Final Notice" stamped in screaming red. Late fees for 3 months, mortgage overdue for 4 cycles. Without the automatic payments from your account, they would have lost the house long ago. I covered my mouth, not to hold back a sob, but to hold back fury. I asked, voice cracked, "How long have they been using my name?" He didn't answer immediately. He looked at me as if he knew the truth would kill a part of my soul. Long enough that they forgot it isn't theirs to use. Harold opened the second folder. Decor invoices, Milwaukee studio rental receipts, KOL booking fees, all under the name Nora Whitaker. My eyes widened. But I didn't sign any of this. Harold nodded gently. You didn't, but someone signed for you. Inside the paperwork was a warped signature trying to mimic mine, Mallory, my sister. The woman who live-streamed every night teaching strangers about healing and self-love. The moment hit me with such coldness my entire body went numb. Harold said quietly, "If you sue, you'll win instantly." I closed my eyes. I didn't want to win. I just wanted to understand why my family saw me as a walking credit card. Here. Harold handed me another statement. Tuition, dorm fees, class payments, all transferred from my account. But the bottom right corner froze my breath. Student suspended, not enrolled. Cole? Suspended? Even though he had cried to me, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't graduate. I pressed my hand to my forehead, feeling the floor tilt beneath me. I wasn't just exploited, I was deceived. By the very people I had protected for years. Harold opened the fourth folder. His voice dropped. You need to stay calm for this part. I looked at the title, Petition for Temporary Conservatorship. I couldn't breathe. I read line by line. We, Frank and Janet Whitaker, request the court grant us authority over the assets and financial decisions of our daughter, Nora Whitaker, due to her unstable mental condition. Unstable mental condition? Me? The one who paid all their debts? The one whose name held the house? The one who kept the entire family from collapsing? Harold said, low but sharp. They plan to seize everything you own under the excuse of mental illness. I went utterly still. No crying. No shaking. I just shut down. No screaming. No breaking anything. I only stared at the pile of documents like staring at the carcass of a creature I had fed for far too long. The afternoon light fell across my face. Everything blurred, except one single thought. My family never loved me. They only loved my existence when it served them. Harold placed the final folder down and said the sentence that flipped the entire game. But they forgot one thing. Every asset of yours is inside the trust I created for you when you were 23. No one can touch it. No one. I lifted my head. For the first time, I felt power in my own voice. They think they can control me, but it's my silence that just exposed every secret they've hidden all these years. And I didn't know that just a few hours later, their downfall would hit even faster than I imagined. Only now did I understand. Sometimes silence itself is the biggest sentence. After the big reveal, I didn't respond to a single message, not one call. My phone lay face down on the hospital table, but every vibration echoed through the room like metal striking stone. Frank kept sending messages. Call back. Urgent. Nora, you're destroying everything. Janet left a voicemail nearly 2 minutes long, her voice trembling but unable to hide the irritation. I told you not to make everything such a big deal. Harold stood by the window, arms crossed. They're not afraid of losing you. They're afraid of losing something else. In the afternoon, Harold handed me my phone. You need to see this. Mallory had posted a crying video. Mascara smeared, voice breaking. My sister is having mental issues. The whole family is falling apart because of her. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Within minutes, the internet did the rest. Someone stitched her video with the photo of Mallory smiling by Lake Michigan while I was lying in the ICU. No drama, huh? You left your sister in the hospital to go on a picnic? The tag R. Whitaker drama started trending. On TikTok, thousands of comments. Who actually has the mental issues here? Worst sister of the year, right here. Mallory's sponsor terminated the contract. Followers dropped in waves. The image of the healing influencer sister went into free fall. A local account posted a photo of the mortgage notice taped to their front door. Final notice. People from the church group commented, Janet has been living lavishly off her daughter for years. We've known. A real estate broker who once worked with Frank publicly wrote, no one can work with this man. Zero financial transparency. I read everything. Not happy, not vengeful. Just light. The things they hid from me for years I didn't need to expose. The community did it for me. That evening, Cole stood at the door, his face as pale as paper. He begged the security guard to let him in. I looked at him, a brother who was carefree, selfish, and pitiful all at once. Cole spoke like he couldn't breathe. Sis, they said I have to handle everything, but I don't even know where to start. He admitted. He had been suspended from school since last semester. The money I paid was to cover it up. He never planned to tell the truth. I didn't feel anger. I only felt hollow. I simply said, "You should have told me the truth before you needed me." Cole broke down crying. Harold stepped forward, placed a hand on my shoulder. "Not this time. You're not saving anyone anymore." A joint email arrived from Frank, Janet, and Mallory. "We are still family. Small issues should not divide blood." Harold read it and laughed. "Small issues? They petitioned to take control of your entire estate." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. I'm not angry at them anymore. I'm just no longer willing to trade my life, so they can live comfortably. And in the very moment I chose silence, they did the stupidest thing they had ever done. It wasn't the light that saved me, but the darkness I finally chose to walk out of. The Chicago afternoon stretched a thin sheet of sunlight across the sidewalk as Harold parked his old sedan near the exit. He opened the door for me as if I had just returned from a long war, and honestly, I had. I took a deep breath. No more monitor beeping, no more frantic messages, just cold, clean air and a hint of freedom. My leased apartment sat near the river, white walls, quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the fan. On the first morning, I made coffee and leaned against the windowsill. Pale golden light slid across the table. No one needed anything from me. No one blamed me for not transferring money. No one depended on me to survive. I took a sip, and the feeling, peace, spread across my chest. My phone lit up a few times. Email from Frank. "Dad just wants one last conversation." Message from Janet. "Mom misses you, stop being childish." A post from Mallory hinting about ungrateful family members. I read them and set the phone down. Not because I was numb, but because I no longer stood in a place where their words could reach me. One morning, Harold placed a sheet of paper in front of me summarizing every cut account. Mortgage, transfers, tuition, credit cards. "Here," he said. "This is your map to freedom." We sat together drinking coffee. I thanked him. He simply nodded. "You just have to live. You don't owe anyone anything anymore." That night, the wind from the Chicago River blew strong. I stood on the balcony, watching the streaks of city lights stretch out like a brand new timeline. I once believed healing meant reconciliation, but now I understood something simpler. Healing is refusing to let anyone reopen your wounds. Not hatred, not revenge, just enough. I don't know where the future will take me, but for the first time, it belongs to me. And I didn't expect that the next day they would come to me one last time with something even more ridiculous than an apology. Not everyone who walks away is a betrayer. Sometimes they're simply choosing to live. As I stood in front of that apartment window, watching the shimmering flow of Chicago traffic below, I realized something. Some endings don't need the sound of a door closing. They just need you to walk out. Quietly, firmly, without looking back. I had lived through a kind of pain no one deserves. A family abandoning me at the moment I nearly died. Secrets dragged into the light. Excuses coated in fake concern. Phone calls that only came when they needed something. But it was that very journey that returned me to myself. If you've stayed with me until now, maybe somewhere in this story, you saw a piece of your own. Maybe you were the one holding an entire family together, the one treated like the spare part, the one waiting for an apology that never came. If so, you are not alone. Family is not the place you're born into. Family is the place where your heart is safe. And if you've ever had to walk away from something just to protect your own peace, please share your story below. I read every single word. Like and subscribe to the channel so I can bring you more meaningful and powerful stories in the future. See you in the next story.